Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Salisbury University President Carolyn Lepre recently gave her State of the University address, pledging to increase enrollment and campus diversity. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush, and we have the president in our studios this afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here.
So I want to start actually with some news that was made last week, which was the announcement that the Ward Museum is going to be relocated. Obviously, duck decoys, wildfire, they're part of our rich history here on the Eastern Shore. Tell me so far what you know, and particularly in terms of preserving that history.
Absolutely. Well, the university is definitely committed to continuing to preserve the history. Since I arrived here in July, I've been hearing a lot about just the deep history of the Ward Museum and how valuable it is to our community. Right now, we are working with the Ward Foundation to make sure that we can keep that collection carefully intact. We want to make sure that it's preserved, and we're looking to find an alternate location so that the community can continue to enjoy our duck decoy history for many, many years to come.
So I understand that essentially it was just too expensive to rehab this iconic place. It's been there a very long time. Mm-hmm. And a nice scenery, it's all been laid out.
Yes. Oh, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful location. But in essence, there was a catastrophic HVAC failure, and the cost of replacing it to be the museum quality that it would need to be in order to properly preserve this incredibly valuable collection was it was a very steep price tag.
I heard that few million or whatever.
Many million. Yes, right. Indeed. Yes.
Do we have any sense yet as to where you can eventually wind up locating?
We're looking at downtown. Okay. Still to come. More to be determined on that front in the next, I would expect in the next few weeks, certainly in the next month.
So in your speech, you talked about increasing enrollment. And
yes.
Of course, it comes at a time when, as I was reading the research, that enrollment is actually down across the country in higher education institutions. So how are you going to, obviously, get yourself to I think it was the 8,500 that you have as a target? And is the pandemic part of the problem in all of this? What are the factors that you think are contributing to this?
Absolutely. The pandemic certainly impacted institutions across the United States and internationally, for that matter. And certainly Salisbury was no different. We saw a smaller cohort of students coming in over the past several years. Salisbury, however, has seen historic growth already. We just brought in the class that started in the fall of this year, fall of 22, the second largest class that we've ever brought into the university and the most racially diverse, which is a really exciting sign for us that says the pandemic was a moment in time, and we are well positioned to move us out of that moment in time and continue to enroll strong cohorts of students, which is certainly our goal. We want to make sure our students are able to do all the things that they want to do. We know there are demographic factors in play. We know that there are fewer high school students graduating from the high schools across the nation than there were before. But Maryland is actually in a pretty good spot in terms of that. We're not going to see the declines that other states, particularly in the Northeast, will be seeing. And that's a positive indicator for us, and so many of our students come from in-state. And so we just want to make sure that we're continuing to offer the incredible quality education, the academic excellence that we're known for, and continue to attract those strong Maryland students to the Eastern Shore.
I think you mentioned in your speech or your address the concept of retention,
yes.
Trying to keep them here. How do you, A, why do they drop out or drop away, and then B, how do you then pull them back in?
Absolutely. In some ways, enrollment to me, and I think to many who are looking at these issues, is far more important than enrollment, right? If we're losing 20% of our freshman class every single year, then it doesn't matter how big the next class is, we're always going to be those percentage points down. Students leave institutions for a whole host of different reasons. And when we talk about retention, we're talking about fall to fall retention. So it's really fall of freshman year to fall
right.
of sophomore year. Sometimes they leave for financial reasons. And so from the university perspective, we can continue to look for ways that we can bridge those gaps. Are students short finances in what areas? Are there different merit scholarships they're eligible for? Can we help point them towards loan opportunities? All sorts of different things to help bridge those financial gaps. Sometimes they leave because they don't feel a sense of belonging. And that's absolutely something the university can address, is developing things like living learning communities or different student clubs and organizations. Faculty can do tremendous outreach to our students to make sure that they understand that they are integrally important to us and we want them all to succeed. And then there are others that are simply leaving because we might not have the programs that they are looking to explore. Maybe they came here thinking they wanted to do one major that we had that they were very strong in, and then they decide they want to move in a different area. And if we don't offer that major, they might go looking for another institution that does offer that. So we have our faculty, our provost. We're always looking to make sure that we're meeting the needs in terms of programs, in terms of new program development that will help accomplish that and make sure that they have those opportunities and those pathways right here with us at Salisbury University.
So one of the things that you mentioned, by the way, is the cost of going to a university. I will tell you that obviously decades ago, it was $100, no tuition, and your little student body card.
Yep.
Doesn't happen anymore.
No.
What do you think has happened to make higher education particularly so expensive? And people, I was just reading a piece the other day where somebody had accumulated some debt, didn't seem like very much, and had not paid it off in like 20 or 30 years. I mean, this long-term effect. Why is that, and what is it the university can do to either lower the cost or mitigate that cost?
Mm-hmm. The escalating cost of higher education certainly has been, something that we think about. We certainly talk about it with our constituents, our stakeholders, people at the state level, all sorts of different areas in terms of thinking about the cost of higher ed. And I think one of the things that I would say is we have expenses just like anybody else does. When we think about, for instance, construction costs, we work hard to make sure that our facilities, our buildings are in beautiful shape for our students to be able to learn in. Well, when the cost of construction goes up across the United States, they're going to go up for us as well. So some of our increases are simply due to that. There's rising costs across the board, and like any other organization, we have to meet those needs. I think that, historically, the reason that we've seen increases in how much higher ed costs has to do a lot with just the facilities, the services, the quality of the faculty you bring in. It's just more expensive to do business. But we truly believe Salisbury University is among the least expensive, the most affordable options in the university system of Maryland. We remain a high value opportunity for our students. I think we have a very strong return on that investment. More than 95% of our students have a job after, within a year of graduation. So we know that we're setting them up for success once they leave us. We want to continually provide scholarships, right? We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for students who need help affording their education to get that help. Some of it's self-invested, some of it's from donor funds, some of it's from the state, and that helps offset things. But we try and help students out when they tell us they have need or they're deserving of it because they have extraordinary credentials. We'll try and help them out in all those different ways so they come out with the least amount of debt possible.
Because one of the things that struck me, and I think I've been talking to some other people, is that the state support, government support, has gone down over many decades, as opposed to either the students or grants, that kind of thing. Should the state be providing more money?
I'll
put you on the spot, right?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I came from Virginia. My previous institution was in Virginia, and I came from New York schools before that. I actually think Maryland is really good to public higher education. I think that they have a long history of strong support for higher ed. Do I think they could do more? Well, my job would be to say yes, of course. Of course, there's always more. We want to make sure that we are making it as affordable as possible for our students, particularly because we want our in-state students to stay with us. I think that's in the best interest of the state of Maryland if we are educating our own and then hopefully keeping them here to be members of the workforce that will just continuously allow our students to help our state rise. But actually, I think the state's been pretty generous with us, and I'm so thankful to the legislators I've met. I've had a chance to speak with the governor and all seem to think very highly of not just public higher education, but Salisbury University in general, and they know that we're good stewards of the funds that we receive.
One of the things that you mentioned is this idea about diversity on campus.
Yes.
And it's one thing to obviously get more people of color and so on
Yes.
on the campus. On the other hand, they have to feel comfortable being here. I've been reading just recently, particularly black LGBT folks who on predominantly white campuses don't feel as accepted, and they have their own particular issues. How do you make a university that's predominantly white comfortable for these students when you bring them in?
I think we could do some very purposeful things, to be honest. I think that certainly we want a feeling of belonging is what you want for every single student. And I think for any student who's coming in with any kind of minority background, you have to do a little bit more. We have an amazing program that when I arrived, I heard about, read about on paper, but got to see in real life, is a program we have called Powerful Connections. And this is a program where we invite minority students to join in. They come in ahead of the semester starting, so they start to cohort build ahead of time. They meet faculty. They meet our amazing support staff in our Diversity and Inclusion Center. They get to see each other. They get to meet current students who've either run through the program or who are volunteering to be part of the program. And so they have this automatic support system built in. We offered our very first cohort in the spring semester, too, for transfer students or brand new students who were joining us in the spring semester. The retention rates of the students who do this program are much higher than those who don't. And so we know these programs work. It's a matter of building them at scale so that we can do them for as many students as possible. But I think the short answer to your question is we have to be very intentional about it. We have to recognize that this is everyone's job and we all need to work together, that belonging is possibly the leading indicator, not just of retention, but of feelings of satisfaction once they graduate from college. And that's the ultimate goal, is that they are satisfied with their experience and that it's going to catapult them to the success that they want in the future.
So one of the things, by the way, I noticed about the governor's State of the State address, Governor Westmore, he praised the higher institutions, loves them, but he says that's not the only way. It's not for everyone. Is there a tension between these two ideas?
I don't think so. I think that's the beautiful thing about career pathways is that higher ed isn't for everybody. That's not to say that it isn't a brilliant thing for the people for whom it is the right choice. And we know that people who are interested in professional careers that require degreeing, credentials, they will make more money over time. They will have more access to promotions and career advancement and all those whole host of things. But there are a lot of ways to do good and a lot of ways to have happy lives. My brother doesn't have a college education, and he's done extraordinarily well for himself. So even in my own life, in my own family, I know college isn't for everybody. So I don't think they're in conflict. I think they actually work kind of beautifully together because we can work together with community colleges. We can work together with high schools to think about how do we all together meet the best needs of the students who are coming up through our middle schools and our high schools now so that they don't feel that there's only one choice for them, or even worse, that there's no choice for them, because that's the real tragedy, is the ones who just think, well, I'm left out. I don't belong in any of these scenarios. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen as much as humanly possible.
Because there's been a critique out there that higher education may not be worth it because you have this tremendous amount of debt that you obviously coming out with. But then there's also a question of whether or not you really learned anything. You know, the classic one is, you got a philosophy degree or you got an English, right? I got mine in history, and here I am, right? What do you say to those people who are looking at higher education and saying, well, maybe that's not worth it. Maybe we should be looking at something else.
Well, I think sometimes that comes from people who don't know what modern higher education maybe looks like. And I can use, Salisbury as an example. That's the one I'm going to talk about today anyway.
Go right ahead.
I think one of the things that's brilliant about the way we do things is that we really are marrying a liberal arts foundation. So we're educating, if you will, the whole person. We're teaching students how to think, how to be critical about being problem solvers, being leaders, those skills that will help them be informed citizens when they go on to graduate. And so I think the liberal arts is the strongest way to develop that skill set. We're also just teaching them accountability. Show up for class, do your homework, right? They're becoming responsible, and then they're learning how to manage their own lives. Then we have major pathways where they're getting pre-professional education. They're getting credentialing if they're in a field like nursing or social work, areas where they're going to exercise science, areas where they're going to need that credential that says, I have this pre-professional skill before we go out. We have places like our sim center and our robotics lab that are allowing students to have these hands-on experiences. So when they go out and get that first job, they're ready. And they have that career preparation. So they've been prepared to be critical thinkers and leaders. They've been prepared to do the tangibles of their job. And we also marry it with a whole host of co-curricular high-impact practices. So they're getting out, they're doing internships, they're studying abroad, they're doing internships like they might do with you even, right? You have Salisbury students right here. Mm-hmm. That's what higher ed is. And in its most beautiful state, that's why I would say higher ed matters, because where else in 4 years can you get all of this and then go out and have your life? And I think that's sometimes the thing that gets lost in the middle is you hear sort of, like you say, the criticisms, well, what are you going to do with a philosophy major? A heck of a lot, actually, I would say.
Well, because one of the things to be philosophical about it, when I look back at what education was to the founders of the country, mm-hmm. they saw education not so much as gaining a bunch of skills to get out mm-hmm. and do your job, but rather to create an educated citizenry who could then participate in democracy, right?
Absolutely.
Do you think the emphasis that a lot of folks are placing on get skills, leaves that somewhat behind? That we're not teaching our citizenry to be educated, to be aware, as it were, no matter what side of the spectrum you fall on.
Sure. Yes, I think sometimes yes. Sometimes it gets lost. I have 20-year-old college-age daughters myself. They're mm-hmm. both second semester sophomores, and sometimes I even hear the stress in their own voices. Oh, am I doing enough to get a job? I'm doing enough to get a job, and it's all about sort of that. I need to get a job. I need to be able to take care of myself. So I sometimes think in the pressure of today, with what they see on social media in terms of success and all those pieces, that sometimes it's pressure students are putting on themselves. But I do think it gets lost a little bit. And I think some institutions do it better than others.
So how do you see the relationship of this university in terms of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, historically black college?
Yes.
For full disclosure, of course, WSCL does have a collaboration agreement with WESM, so we are collaborating with them. But what do you see as your connection to them?
Excellent. Well, I think the beauty of being part of the University System of Maryland is that we have partners all across the state, and UMES is a fabulous partner to have here on the Eastern Shore. I've had the great fortune of getting to know their president, Heidi Anderson, who's wonderful, and she's doing tremendous things for the students who go to school at UMES. I think there's a whole lot more we can do together. I think we can build pathways where students can go back and forth between our campuses, either for different degree programs. We already have faculty who are collaborating with one another. Our students will participate in extracurricular activities. They can park on our campus for free, just like they can, right? We have that reciprocal in terms of parking. I think it's an amazing thing. If you have two universities close together and they work together, it's more value for anyone who participates with either institution.
Do you see areas where we might have that collaboration that perhaps we don't have it now? I know you've only been on the job a short time, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but any sense about that at all? Or are you guys talking about it?
I think we're just starting to. Yeah. We're starting to think about what I'm certainly starting to think about those ways that we can work together. They have a lot of terrific programs like their pharmacy program, their physician assistant program. I think their graduate level health science programs are fantastic and again will only get better over time. So I think there's definitely opportunities for us to continue to work with them on those areas. I think more to come. One
of the things, by the way, you also mentioned is that there's obviously a lot of building going on on the campus.
Yes.
But one name did not appear in your address. Not to put you on the spot.
Okay. Oh, gosh.
There you go. Salisbury University President Janet Dudley Eschbach.
Yes.
She, when I first came here, she built this thing. I mean, if you, for instance, you look along Route 13, 3 major buildings, she was there. What sense do you get about her legacy? What sense do you get about what she's left for you guys?
Yes. Well, she has been, she's one of the first people I got to speak to when I was offered the position. And I still remember the day that I came to campus over the summer. And it was the first time, I think, in Salisbury history that 3 presidents were all in one place at one time. So I was there with Dr. White and Dr. Janet. And it was, what an opportunity to be able to learn from your predecessors about their vision for the institution, how they saw it growing over time. And she's continued to be supportive. She reaches out to me every so often, and we've gotten together and had lunch a couple of times. I think her legacy is certainly it's buildings, but it's more than buildings. And I think she took Salisbury to new heights that it had not been before. She definitely left it better than she found it. In terms of academics, we have tremendous programs that were built under her leadership. The work she did with international and cultural competency programs was certainly tremendous. And her athletics. Think about what she's done for athletics in terms of the complex that we've put in place. She's left big shoes to fill. I'll leave it at that. But it's a pleasure to have her be a resource for me, because why not learn? If people are willing to share with you, learn from them.
Is there anything that she's said to you or told you that you think you value the most, at least at this point? I mean, anything that you...
Think big.
Think big?
Yeah. Don't be hamstrung by, well, I'm not sure we can do it. Try it. And I think that was a lot of the philosophy that led her to informed decision making, of course, always. Right. But there are lots of things we can do. Yeah.
How do you see, by the way, your relationship to the state legislature? When in the past, as a matter of fact, during her tenure, we had someone who actually sat on the appropriations committee. So when we needed money for something or whatever, she certainly had the ear of somebody that was important. Now, we do have Cherie Semple Hughes, who the House of Delegates, who is like second in command kind of thing. So we do have that. What kind of relationship do you see, and is that going to get us something? And I'm add this is that Westmore, of course, does not necessarily come to the Eastern. It's not from the Eastern Shore, but certainly, I guess he comes to it. Yeah. But we don't have that person that we maybe used to have.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's say that, right? Oh. Not yet.
Okay.
I think that's part of my job. Is I've already started to build relationships. I've been to Annapolis several times. You know, I think my job in some ways is to be that chief cheerleader, and anywhere that I can go to talk about the amazing things that Salisbury University is doing and how the state can continue to support our students, I will do. So we may not have them today, but we will. We will. I feel confident about that.
The other thing, well, you do. I guess we have Jake Day. He's in the cabinet, and it might not be his bailiwick, but nonetheless, he's there. Right?
He's fantastic.
So, how do you see? Speaking of Day, how do you see the relationship between the Salisbury University and the city of Salisbury? And in your address, you talked certainly a lot about businesses and so on, not necessarily a lot about town and gown. How do you see that relationship?
I think it has to be a strong one. When I interviewed for this position, somebody said, you know, there are colleges that are in towns and there are college towns. And I think that that's the kind of relationship I would love to continue to build. I've been very fortunate to have gotten to know our new mayor,
Jack Heath. Yeah.
Yep, Jack Heath, over the fall semester, and have gotten to talk with him since he's been installed, just about continuing to further the partnership with the city. Our students go out and do volunteer work. They're interning. They're out. We're trying to get them out of the bubble, right, of the walls on off of Camden Avenue, right. Get them out into the larger city and the Eastern Shore in general. So I think it's a very important partnership. I feel very pleased with what I'm hearing about the town and gown relationship to date. We have a town and gown council that meets regularly to make sure that we're continuing to hear what emerging problems or issues or thoughts, suggestions, opportunities that our community members might have. I think it's just keep those lines of communication open and know that we're an important part of this community, and we want to make sure we're doing right by the people here.
So one of the things, by the way, you mentioned in your address is you heard a lot of people, a lot of input, but you said you also heard some frustrations. And you mentioned processes.
Yes.
But beyond process, I mean, we can all be, frustrated with processes, but is there something more beyond that? I mean, what sense do you get about the frustrations that you think you hear?
That was actually, believe it or not, that was a lot of it. It was more, I think I was amazed and so pleased to find that the people at Salisbury, the students, and I talked to faculty, staff, students, community members, have very positive feelings, passionate feelings even, about the work that they do and the way that they do it. And I think the biggest frustrations are often that there are things in the way that keep us from being able to do our jobs in the way that we want to. I think people want us to be distinctive. I think they want to have people understand that Salisbury is not just a school that you could go to. It's an extraordinary school to go to. And how do we better tell that story? And I think that's part of what we're going to be doing. And I think that's part of my strengths, is to be able to help facilitate that storytelling so that we can share those pieces forward.
Is there a sense that some things need to be streamlined?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. I think everything always needs to be streamlined, right?
It all grows.
I'm the constant home reorganizer. There's always a better way.
The other thing, sort of stepping back philosophically, we have this great debate that's going on in the country. We can look to, say, the state of Florida, for example, and the issue of how race is taught, how the history of our country is taught. What do you make of that debate? We certainly do not seem to have it here, obviously, in Maryland, but what do you think is going on?
It's a tough question to answer. And I have colleagues who are working in all sorts of different states, including Florida, and just listening to some of the issues that they're dealing with. I think time will tell. Time will tell what this actually means in terms of how we are able to teach and what goes on in our classrooms. I feel very fortunate to be in the state of Maryland. I'll say that.
Because I think one of the things that struck me is that this debate, at least it's going on, also reflects changes within our own society, whether they're demographic or they're cultural, and that seems to be playing out. And now you're sort of getting this sort of reaction, I guess. Florida probably being the best example. Yeah,
it could be. It could be. Like I said, I think we're just in. Time will tell as to how this all develops, but I know that it's certainly something that we're all going to be looking at as we move forward.
Have you had discussions about this at all at the Salisbury University?
In terms of
how the history of the country is taught, in terms of race, that kind of thing, or has it come up?
Certainly. I think in academic affairs, I think we are constantly thinking of how can we best meet the needs of our students? How can we let the experts in the classroom do what's right for our students? And so it's certainly a topic of conversation, and we'll continue to do so.
We're going to be speaking with Salisbury University President Carolyn Lepre. She just recently gave her State of the University address. We appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.